Hello, I'm your host, Linda Kasonde. I'm a lawyer who spent several years as an advocate for human rights, justice, and the rule of law in my native country, Zambia. This podcast was born out of the need to share women's experiences of leadership and to advocate for more women to take up leadership positions, based on themes in my memoir, Women, Resilience, and the Will to Lead. We cover topics ranging from motherhood to running for office, ambition, and managing the imposter syndrome. I hope you enjoy it. Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Women, Resilience, and the Will to Lead podcast. We're taking a short break. We'll be right back.
What if your next personal loan gets you in the driver's seat of a brand new 2024 Ford Ranger Wildtrak? With Standard Chartered Bank, every approved personal loan is a chance to win big. Get the cash you need for school fees, home upgrades, or that dream project, and stand a chance to win amazing prizes, including a 2024 Ford Ranger Wildtrak, a home solar solution, or a Samsung A3 smartphone. It is easy and rewarding. Apply online today or visit any Standard Chartered branch for more details. Promotion runs from the 5th of March to the 31st of August 2025. T's and C's apply. Standard Chartered Bank. Here for good.
Today, our guest is none other than Dr. Irene Banda. Welcome, Dr. Banda.
Thank you very much. I'm so happy to be here.
Great. Thank you so much. And how are you?
I'm doing really well. Really, really well. Thank you. How are you?
I can't complain. Thank you so much for being here. It's an absolute delight. We've spent a lot of time trying to get this episode off the road. So it's really a pleasure to have you here.
It's happening finally. I consider this a great honor. Thank you again.
Thank you. So Dr. Banda, we'll start right at the top. Who is Dr. Irene Banda?
Who am I? I describe myself as a strategist, especially as it relates to startup businesses, business continuity, re-engineering businesses that have not done too well. I consider myself to be a scholar. I like to get to the bottom of issues. I like to research. I consider myself as a business coach. I like to look for innovative ideas. I'm also very passionate about how do we create wealth as opposed to poverty reduction strategies. And that is important to me because it helps me connect with low-income people and helps me to come up with innovative ideas that will improve their capacity to earn livelihoods. But that's just one part of me. But the part that then also defines me, I'm a mother. I'm an aunt. I'm a grandmother. I'm a friend to many. I am a mentor. I'm also deeply Christian.
Mm-hmm. Okay, we'll definitely touch on that later on. But how would you say you've changed from, say, the 10-year-old Irene Banda?
Oh, I definitely have changed. The 10-year-old Irene Banda was very timid. I didn't actually, I think at that age, I still had an idea of what I wanted, but I was in a milieu where a child was a child. So I did a lot of crying, but I also did a lot of reading. I have always been drawn to reading, adventure in terms of just finding out why are things happening the way they are happening. And so the change is that I'm actually able to act on that now. When I was a child, a 10-year-old, I'll just wonder and ask the questions. And at times I end up being a nuisance. Elders would want to shut me up because I was always asking the why questions. But now as an adult, what has changed is that I can actually act on them now.
Tell us a little bit about that. Where did you grow up? And what was the setting to your childhood?
I was born to Zambians that had moved from Northern Rhodesia then. My father had moved from Northern Rhodesia to Zimbabwe, called Southern Rhodesia then, in search for employment, and met my mother there. So I was born in Zimbabwe, but from Zambian parents. And when it was time to come home, we came back to Zambia when I was about 12. My father was a businessman. He never went to school, but my parents never went to school. But he was a serial entrepreneur. Like he did whatever needed to be done to bring money to the table. And he took his children there. So I have sold at the market. At one point, he had minibuses. So I was conductor in minibuses. So some of the routes, Matero and City Center. So I've done quite a number of things. My mother used to crochet and knit. So I can crochet, I can knit. And we would be asked to go and sit by the shops. ZCBC, it was called then. Waiseni, it was called then. And we would sit outside and we would sell. And then when we went back in the evening, we would account for our sales. So that was really the background that I come from.
Okay, wonderful. And I suppose that background set you up for what you later, the career you later chose, which was in the financial sector. And you came up through the financial sector at a time when women were not very prominent as they are now. Tell us about that time and what the experience taught you.
You're so right. I came up from the lower ranks in the bank, actually, the financial sector. And while there was no complaint, certainly we were not favored. But because I was self-taught, I always wanted to know what is happening. I wanted to know where my salary came from. So, of course, I knew the bank paid my salary. How did they actually make the salary? What decisions needed to be made for me to end up with a salary and everybody else's? And so I made it an effort to understand everything that was happening in the bank. So I just simply got nosy and asked people, what are you doing here? If you are in advances, what do you do here? Some departments we had exchange control bills. What do you do here? And so I managed to get that knowledge. And that knowledge, I remember, helped me to actually understand how the whole bank was run. To a point that I worked for a particular bank that the managing director, the head of the bank, had to leave in an emergency and they didn't come back. So a decision of who would take over and run the bank had to be arrived at. And somehow it was realized that I was the right person to run the bank. But at the time, this was the strangest decision they had to make. And it didn't happen. I was told that I was the person who qualified, but they couldn't do it. So I had this very difficult conversation. And so I had to make a choice between taking on the role, but having a second person who is actually doing the work.
Reporting to somebody else.
In the background.
Yes.
So on the face of it, I would be the person that is running the bank, but I would be reporting to somebody else, and this person would be reporting to the board. And at that point, I felt that I couldn't do it anymore. And I think that was actually my last posting in the bank because I resigned and just went home. So yes, it was difficult. So I'm truly encouraged when I see women rise now in the bank, in the financial sector. This is something that didn't happen in my time. So really, for those that are there, kudos to them, but we are also cheering them from the sideline.
Absolutely, and they're standing on your shoulders. So would you say that, do you think you didn't get the position as the managing director because you were a woman?
That's the message I received.
Okay.
That's the message. It may not have been said in those exact terms, but that's the message I received because they asked me to report to somebody else who would then be doing the work. I could do the work, but I just got a sense that the decision makers did not trust for some reason, they did not trust that I could actually do the work or I would be a good front for the bank. And so there had to be somebody else.
That's very interesting. So I think it was last year, I attended an event at which you were the keynote speaker. And you gave your story, and I'd like you to go through exactly your career path in a minute. But something struck me about your story, which was that it was very unconventional for a woman of your generation to have firstly risen through the financial sector the way you did, obtained a PhD while running a home and having children, traveling abroad to pursue your career, all these things. And then we'll also get to the fact that you currently live in Northwestern Province as your base. So tell us about that journey.
I think that journey is very much rooted in some of the things that I sort of began to realize about myself that is connected to my childhood, because I have always been really, really curious. And so when I was in the bank, we had this idea, and I think it's still alive, that the low-income people are not bankable. Some of it is going away. And I had quite a pitch about it. It's going to take me the same amount of time and effort to assess a big loan facility that's going to earn the bank something as it will take me to look at a small enterprise that won't earn us as much. But that became a point of inquiry for me. And I wanted to know, are there solutions that we can bring to low-income people that will still make sense to a bottom line, that will still make a profit? And so I was actually the brain that started Some Microfinance, because I really just kept asking these questions, and I was introduced to microfinance. And of course, got into that. But even as I was in there, my curiosity got the better of me because I just needed to understand how is what we're doing really changing people's lives. And it's those questions that made me go and do my PhD. And my PhD was actually an action research among the poor people in a rural setup in Zimbabwe and an urban setup in Chipata compound here in Lusaka. And from there, I did get an understanding of how could we possibly approach this as a solution. And it was riding on those findings that I decided I was going to go to Northwestern Province. And the reason for going to Northwestern Province was if I could get low-income people that are in the rural areas. If you check statistics then, I'm not sure now what it is, Northwestern Province had some of the highest levels of poverty and among rural communities. So I felt that if I could get something going, if we could produce, then we could actually export to the Congo on this side and to Angola on that side. But I needed to be there. I needed to understand. And yeah, that is what led me to actually initially spending 2 years in the bush to get everything set up. It is set up now. And we do have communities that we are working with and producing both livestock as well as crops, just gone into starting coffee plantation right now.
Fantastic. Changing lives one person at a time.
Indeed, I couldn't agree more.
And maybe back to your foundation in the financial sector. As a woman entering into your career as a young woman, what do you think has changed from that time for women to what we're experiencing now as women in the workplace?
A lot has changed, and I'm so glad that I'm still part of it. A lot has changed in the sense that women are beginning to realize that nobody's going to create a space for them if they don't create the spaces themselves. And I've seen women actually arise to create that space and to bring the young ones on board. So without necessarily mentioning names, I see some powerful women that are rising and setting up platforms, helping young women really fulfill who they are. So I do participate in some of those because I actually mentor some of the young women that are on these platforms to prepare them to sit on boards, to prepare them to be able to articulate, to go deep within themselves and pick what is there. Because I think for a long time, women have been stereotyped. And because we have been stereotyped, I think sometimes we pick some of that stereotype and our behaviors begin to respond to the stereotype. And what that does is you begin to shut down who we are as women. And part of what I try to do is, if I'm going to mentor someone, I don't want to bring what is happening out there. I want them to go inside themselves and bring out what they have. And I'm seeing some of that happening, and it's beautiful. It really is.
That's lovely. I think I touched on the issue earlier of the fact that you've worked in many different countries during your career, and what has working in the diaspora taught you about being Zambian?
That's an interesting question, because when I'm back in Zambia, sometimes we are not kind to ourselves. Sometimes we talk about Zambians can't do this, Zambians can. Of course, there are things that we need to change. But having worked in the diaspora, I spent a bit of time in Switzerland. And having worked with different nationalities, I could safely say that I do take my hat off to Zambians, because I know that Zambians can work. I know Zambians apply themselves. In terms of comparing with what I have seen elsewhere, I think we are very much there. We are not at the bottom of the ladder. We are very much there. But sometimes I wonder whether we are aware of that. Because I can't help thinking that if we are aware that we have a comparative advantage, I think we will want to work on it. We will want to improve it. But I wonder whether the lack of exposure is what makes us just remain within ourselves, thinking that we are still down there. But I think that Zambians can work hard. I'm using the word can, because I think there are decisions that sometimes we make not to do so. And that's the one that becomes a killer. But I've seen Zambians that are working in the diaspora. Actually, when I went away, I took a Zambian to come and work as my PA. And Zambians can apply themselves. Zambians will work to targets. Zambians will deliver. So do we deliver here? Sometimes it's disappointing. A good number of times it's disappointing. And so there is a gap that we need to work at. But I think the positive for me is we have the capacity to deliver. We do it when we're out there, which means we can do it when we're here.
Absolutely, 100%. And on the personal side, you've obviously achieved all these things in terms of your career, your PhD, whilst balancing a family. But on the personal side, you also had the experience of having been through a divorce. And but before that, you were married as a very young woman, and then decided to have a divorce later on. Please tell us about those experiences that shaped you as a woman.
Yes, I will certainly delve into that. I have 5 children, and I brought up an extra 4 when my sister and her husband died. I was married, and I was married to a wonderful human being, really kind, very much participating in co-parenting both our biological children as well as the orphans that came into our family. And I want to believe that we made our home a good home for the children, but also even for others. We were very much involved in the church, so we had activities that we participated in. And of course, the sad thing is that the marriage didn't progress. And therefore, the question of why did that happen? And with hindsight, I want to say that we worked really well when there was something that we were working towards. We were bringing up the children, we were doing things. But I think the cracks that appeared years prior were not even evident to me until the children were now adults and they are living. And that is when I realized that we actually were mismatched. I had this go-getter mentality, and I don't believe he was at the same space. And therefore, in trying, and you have to remember that I am old school, so there are things that we are taught when you're in marriage, you have to keep your marriage. And I really worked hard to keep my marriage. It just got to a point where it was my marriage or it was me. We no longer had this common thing. The children were gone, but I still was the same Irene that wanted to go out and do. My mind could see things that needed to be done. But I was supposed to be a wife and be at home. I think he also supported me in my career to an extent. But I think I got to a point where I realized that we were, in my mind, we were not necessarily that matched in terms of our aspirations, in terms of our individual aspirations. In terms of parenting, I think we were fine. But in terms of our individual aspirations, we were just not matched. I was drowning. I just found that I couldn't do what I wanted to do. But because I wanted to maintain the peace, the choice I had was I either walk away or I just die. I really just die here because that's what was happening. I was really dying within. And so we started the conversation that we just didn't have that much in common anymore. And I still wanted to do things. And that truly led to our going our separate ways about 20 years ago, actually. We went our separate ways. I think both of us were quite saddened by that development. But I think we realized that it was the best way forward. And so here I am.
Okay, well, to the point that you raised, that, and thank you so much for sharing that, because so many women don't, and so many women don't make that choice, because as women we're taught to shibikisha.
Yes.
So how was that for you? You mentioned that, you know, when you're married, you're given certain lessons to maintain the marriage at all costs. What is your view on shibikisha?
If you had asked me before I went through the divorce, I would have said, do everything you can to keep the marriage. I still have that view. Let's do everything you can, but starting with let's. So it's the two of you that have to work at it. I think the lessons I received seemed to suggest that I held the shibikisha ropes, you know, and that for me is something that we need to review. I think that if there is any shibikishaing to be done, if there is any sticking to the marriage because you feel that you must stick to it, you need to do it together. You need to do it together. You need to agree what those parameters will look like. And in my mind, some of them might relate to how much free time do you give one another? What are the expectations that we would have one another? Each party, the man, does he have a space away from the marriage where he can recharge? What can he do to recharge within the marriage? Similarly, does a woman have a space where she can recharge? And by that, what I mean is, do I have a space, friends, people that we are not having a pity party. But I'm definitely recharging. We are talking about progressive things. I can share a bit of some of my challenges and we help one another. When I get back together with my husband, we carry on. So for me, I think that's the frame I would put the Shipikisha. It just should not be the work of one person. Both people need to recognize that we have reached a place where we need to remodel our relationship. What are we going to do about it? That will be my take.
And you've mentioned you're a mother and you're now a grandmother. So you have children who've been married and also have their own children. So in terms of generationally, do you think that the teachings that men and women are given, and we know that women are given far more lessons than men going into marriage, do you think that these lessons are fit for purpose? And if not, what would you do differently for your children, or what did you do differently for your children?
So let me address the issue of fit for purpose. And when you say fit for purpose, you actually get the definition within that fit for purpose. So what worked in the 19th century didn't seem to gel in the 20th century, and we're now in the 21st century. Which means that we need to keep going back and looking at what do we mean by fit for purpose? How do two people who have come from two different backgrounds, how do they come together and develop a lasting relationship? And I think if you add in the works the fact that I remember when I was getting married, my father would say things like, if you're getting married, I will say it in Nyanja, if you're getting married, ukwatiriwe kumuntu amene mzakwera basi imodzi poenda kumonzi. Like you need to be on the same bus whatever you call the village should be for both of you. Which means that some of the rules that we were given did not take into an account that I am part Chewa, I'm part Ngoni, and I'm going to be married to a Lamba, and that was my ex-husband. That did not necessarily take the Lamba tradition to help me understand what do they call the foundation of a marriage. And I think that is where the reviews need to come in. What is fit for purpose? And I think that when you talk about people that are coming together within the same environment, Zambia, for instance, that can even be easier. I've got a son-in-law who is British. And that's a completely different kettle of fish. So what do I tell my children? So I get caught up because when my children were getting married, there was an expectation that we would have all these traditional things happening. And it was difficult. But then my children have a good relationship with me, so they don't necessarily need to go through their aunt, which traditionally would be expected to get to me. My daughter came to me and said, "What's this now? What are these things that these people are telling me? Why are you allowing this?" So I had to move. I had to listen to her issues. I had to go to the people that held the traditional views. I think we also sort of broke a few rules. They were not necessarily pleased with me. And we decided, why don't we use the church to help her understand the marriage? I would say that to a large, well, I think even now we still have the issue, but I think the church is probably doing something to make sure that it is a fair playing field in terms of teaching, training both the man and the woman. But I think to a large extent, we still sort of are heavy on the woman and not so much on the man. And it does show up some cracks. So, yeah, I keep the door open. I want to talk with my girls. I've got two girls. They're both married. One is in England and one is in Australia. And I always keep the door open when they have issues to discuss. But I also have to be careful because this is my daughter. And if something has happened to harm her, or I perceive it as negative in her marriage, I will certainly side with her. So I have to constantly caution myself that their husband, pick up on the tradition now, is my new son. So I have to try and be fair at all times. So I think it's something that we need to continually review. I'm doing my best. Sure, you'd need to have a conversation with them and they'll give you their own version. But I want to believe that I'm doing my best to keep them in their marriages, because I still believe in the institution of marriage.
Absolutely. Dr. Banda, you mentioned your faith in the context of marriage, but more broadly speaking, how has faith been the foundation of your life, and how did that occur?
Faith is a real strong foundation of my life today. There's nothing that I do that I do not use my faith lenses in doing, but it wasn't always so. Because my parents were very deeply Christian and really quite religious. Things were strict in the house. But I got to a point where I started asking questions. I really started asking questions because I was given this view that there are people that seem to be righteous and there are people that are sinners. And therefore, the idea that those that seem to be righteous are accepted before God and those that seem to be sinful have issues. And so my concern was, if we were all created by God, truly if we were all created by God, why this dichotomy? What needs to happen? And that was my curiosity that I asked. And my mom was usually the one that got all these questions to a point where she said, you know what, why don't you go out there and ask? Just go to any church and see whether they have the answer. I failed to just be a number in the church, just attend, sing, pray, and go back home. I really wanted to know why I'm doing this. And I think that led me into this series of questions. And I found myself at a place where I realized that I needed to have a personal relationship with God. There are some people that led me to that place where I realized that I needed to actually make a decision to have a personal relationship with God. And that decision has nothing to do with denomination. It's my personal relationship with God. And so some people helped me go through that journey with a lot of questions. And when I got to a point where I realized I actually now know the relationship that I have with God, I now have a responsibility to continue aligning with God's will in my life, which means that I got to also understand that God is interested in everything that I do. There is nothing that is too complex for him, but it was my choice to keep looking up to him, and keep behaving as somebody who is used of God. And that was truly my journey. I'm very active in my church, but I also recognize that it's not about the church. It's really about me and the relationship I have with God. And so when I'm in Lusaka, I participate in my church here. When I'm in Northwestern Province, I participate in a church that is totally unrelated to my church here in Lusaka. And I'm very much aware that when I walk into any church, I want to be amongst the company of believers, among the company of people that are worshiping God. But I take myself there as somebody who is completely accepting of God working in my life, and that this is a relationship between me and him.
I think those are the lived experience of ask and you shall receive.
Yes.
Seek and you shall find.
Knock and the door
shall be
opened.
Indeed. And we're speaking just shortly after the death of Pope Francis, who was obviously the head of the Catholic Church. And for me, I'm a Catholic. Having observed on social media the responses to the impact that Pope Francis had on ordinary people, both Christian and non-Christian. How, first of all, did that have any impact on you? And what does faith in practice mean for you?
I think that's really a good way of putting it. The passing of the Pope had an impact on me. Earlier, when I explained about the relationship that I have with God, one of the key things that I ask myself is, now I know you, God. What is my purpose? Why did you bring me on planet Earth? What do you expect of me? What do you need of me? And therefore, I know we use words like you have a call, you have a ministry, but at the end of the day, it's really about finding your purpose and believing that God put you on earth for this purpose. And the death of the Pope, or rather the life of the Pope, has a serious impact on me because I want to believe that he found his purpose. He may have been a Pope, and we understand everything that goes with that role, but I think when you look at the other side, how he related with people that were marginalized, I do not know the detail of the abuses that were happening in the church, but he decided that he was going to deal with it. All the issues that seemed to be, problematic, he seemed to get head on to want to deal with it. And for me, he epitomized somebody that had found purpose, that had understood purpose. And I think that I find myself in a place where I do not have the tools to judge whether he was right or wrong. But it just inspires me to say that I need to sit in my purpose. Do I know my purpose? I need to sit in my purpose. If the Pope was able to find his purpose in the pomp and splendor of the Vatican, he was still able to go and wash the feet of prisoners. He was still able to go and relate with low-income people. It's really an inspiration of somebody that found his purpose.
Now, in your faith life, as part of your church here in Lusaka, you've been leading the REMA Bible program here in Lusaka. It's a leadership program that is faith-based. And one thing that sometimes I struggle with the church, and I'm not speaking about my church specifically, but churches everywhere. I came across this phrase in my devotional Bible, and the lady said, sometimes Christians are so heavenly minded that they're of no earthly good. That is to say, people can be so dogmatic or so rigid about their faith that they can't see Christ in the vulnerable. They can't see them in the poor, in the marginalized, and therefore don't act Christ-like. Maybe you can speak to that a little bit.
Yes, I spent about 21 months at REMA. I was asked to go and support them. I'm no longer there. And REMA actually combines, let me say, REMA is focusing on helping people find their purpose in God. And so there's theological courses, there are biblical courses, and there are leadership courses. I still teach leadership courses. I also hear you when you say the saying that Christians can be so heavenly minded, and miss the mark. And my response to that as a faith person, and where my faith journey has taken me, is really to recognize that I am here today. And when we, for instance, we go to the Lord's Prayer, there's something in there which says, give us this day our daily bread. And may your kingdom come on earth as it is in heaven. So my understanding is that as Christians, we have a role to play here on earth. And that role is not necessarily, does not exclude livelihoods. Yes, it is necessary for us to spread the gospel, to make sure as many people as possible get to know about God's salvation plan and bring them to a point where they can make a decision. But once that has happened, we have another responsibility. We see that the church, in the early church, just after Jesus had left, they were involved in sharing food. They were involved in making sure that there was no one who was in need amongst them. We see the apostles actually saying, we have to continue preaching the gospel. However, we need people that are going to look at the daily needs. So that is also a God-given expectation. And therefore, my response to your question is that part of what I am doing in Northwestern Province and what I continue doing is really part of my faith journey, practical assignment. Go out there. I don't believe that if we have the knowledge, we have the tools, we should continually support the idea of looking at the statistics that Zamstats give us. There are so many people that are going hungry. There are so many people. I think we should be able to ask the question, so what? So what? I sometimes have this saying that when in Lusaka, people will say that Boma Yanganepo, the government should look at our problems. And I say for us Christians, we say, the kingdom of heaven come. We actually have a Boma that can give us the tools, that can give us the motivation to go out and make a difference. So I totally ascribe to the idea of we need to be relevant today. We need to be relevant today. Once we have accepted this relationship with God, we are all in God's plan for salvation, the work begins.
Thank you very much. And perhaps lastly, or maybe it's before I get to my last question. So you have 5 children, 3 boys and 2 girls. And as you were raising them in your family, what was your greatest aspiration for those children?
Oh, you know what would be interesting is to ask them, because now I hear them speak that I push. So it's likely that I pushed them. I really pushed them. Why did I push them? Because I still do that. The people that I mentor now, I do the same. And part of my belief is that there is so much that we are inside, and we don't usually go inside to find the solutions. We will read. People will tell us, go and read about so-and-so, go and read about so-and-so, and we try to apply what we have read. What about what you have? It's easier to actually work with what you have because it comes from a natural place, but you need to get it out. So I push my children, and of course they have achieved great things. I remember my eldest has a PhD. She's a Rhodes Scholar. I remember when she was doing her PhD, the acknowledgements at the beginning of her thesis, she acknowledged a whole lot of people. And I think the last sentence, I would be remiss to not mention my mother, who pushed me until I got to this place. So yes, I have expected the most of my children. Maybe I may even have sounded unkind at the time. But I think they are worth more, even today, they are worth more than what they have already achieved. So yeah, I want them to go and get.
I love that. We're taking a short break. We'll be right back.
What if your next personal loan gets you in the driver's seat of a brand new 2024 Ford Ranger Wildtrak? With Standard Chartered Bank, every approved personal loan is a chance to win big. Get the cash you need for school fees, home upgrades, or that dream project, and stand a chance to win amazing prizes, including a 2024 Ford Ranger Wildtrak, a home solar solution, or a Samsung A3 smartphone. It is easy and rewarding. Apply online today or visit any Standard Chartered branch for more details. Promotion runs from the 5th of March to the 31st of August 2025. T's and C's apply. Standard Chartered Bank. Here for good.
Just as a preface, I am a very big Oprah Winfrey fan. And as you know, she's close to your age. She's a little bit older. And one thing she often says is she wants God to use her until she's used up in her life. That is ever evolving, ever reaching, ever pursuing, ever asking. And so to you, I ask you, what do you want for your future? What I want for my future, and for those that I'm mentoring, I have had these conversations with a number of people. I've said, I don't want to go in my grave with the things that I have amassed, with the tools that I have amassed, with the knowledge that I have amassed. I want to believe God has been gracious to me. I've been to most parts of the world. I've been to the mountains in Lima. I've interacted with the water people on Lake Titicaca. I've been to the favelas of Brazil, been to India, to Sierra Leone and Sri Lanka. I've interacted, and the totality of that experience has brought me to where I am now. But I'm saying I want to offload. Mm-hmm. I want to offload. And so I tell people, take what you need. Take what you need. It's of no use when I'm no longer on this planet. So my whatever number of years I have left, that's really my goal. Of course, I would echo Oprah by saying that I want to be used of God. Mm-hmm. But if I can handhold some people, I'm willing to do that. Yesterday, somebody stopped me because I was doing a workshop on Saturday on leadership. And she stopped me because she was in the room, and she said, "You really touched me." So I said, "Do you want my phone number? Can I give you my phone number? Can you call me? I want to know where you are. I want to know how I can help you." So I make myself available. Of course, it means that sometimes my diary is really full, but I would rather work with somebody who really needs, who recognizes that I need something more. And my role there is not to tell them what they should do, but to tell them how they should go back inside and help them redefine what they can be. And I also hope that in so doing, we can create this thing that can get passed on. So when they have gotten what they need from inside, they will also have the tools of how to do that, so they can help the next person and the next person. That's truly what I see as what I should be doing in the next stage of my life. I love it. Dr. Banda, it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you. I wish you all the best, and thank you so much for sharing your life with us. Thank you so much. I really appreciate this time. Thank you. God bless you. Thank you for tuning in to Women, Resilience and the Will to Lead. I'd like to thank our production team, Keen Kings Media. If you enjoyed this episode, please like, share, and press the subscribe button.